So at this point, I just want to bring up Professor Steve Kaplan, and again, a person who needs no introduction. I could use dean-like words to describe him and say he's a leading light, he's a preeminent scholar, exemplary, extraordinary contributions. But that's so much like dean talk, so I actually would describe him as a gorilla in his field. Do you like that, Steve? Really? So, but actually to describe him more appropriately is not the gorilla, is really another thing that I've come to learn about at Notre Dame, and that is these multi-sport athletes. These athletes who could excel in different things. And so clearly everyone knows of Steve's teaching awards, extraordinary and really just always taking up space in a business week. But more than that, I really know of Steve's work from entrepreneurship. As distinguished as he is to you in the finance field, he is also extraordinarily distinguished in entrepreneurship. In fact, has played a major role in mentoring whether it's venture capitalists or playing a major role with the Kauffman Foundation, which is sort of the engine behind how entrepreneurship field has developed. So I just want to say thank you very much to Steve for all his work, not only in finance, but in entrepreneurship. His work not only in research, but also in teaching. And by the way, he's also developed case studies in the process too. So from gorilla to multi-sport athlete, please welcome Steve Kaplan.
I don't know what to say, but I won't make jungle noises. So thank you for having me here. It really is great to be here and to see some of my friends. And I'm going to talk about, as opposed to the called capital markets side, I'll go to the corporate governance, corporate finance side. I think I'll be a little bit more positive, and there'll be some negative as well. So let's see what I'm going to talk about. Yeah, we'll start off with a negative. Corporate governance, almost everything, you've seen over the last, 5-7 years, really since Enron, has kind of been negative, right? Corporate governance is just bad. We have, Nardelli, Kozlowski, more recently John Thain with his bathroom or whatever it was. There have been one thing after another. Boards, what are boards criticized for in the United States? They're criticized for paying CEOs too much, not paying for performance, being too friendly to management. The CEOs are criticized as making too much money, stealing when they can. There's this whole story that managerial power explains everything. So I guess I'm starting off negative. We have Nell Minow, who is always, when the press needs a quote about how rapacious CEOs are, Nell's there. This is when she gave to the Senate. Lucian Bebchuk is also out there. Nell's the pay performance disparity is so outrageous, so atrocious, that it undermines the credibility of our system of capitalism. By the way, since 2006. She's still saying that today. So what am I going to talk about? So, the question is, are the critics right? And I'm going to throw a lot of evidence at you that basically says they are wrong. The fact is, it's not obvious. The typical CEO has been overpaid, and I'll try to convince you of that. It's certainly not true that they're not paid for performance. They are paid for performance. There's some evidence boards actually have been doing a better job over time. And the managerial power story just does not hold any empirical water. So, why all the criticism? There have been bad actors. There's no doubt. It also makes great politics, as we've seen recently with AIG and TARP. And there's a lot of confusion. And so what I'm going to talk about, hopefully, is unconfuse you. What I'm going to start with is pre-crisis downturn data, because that's where I wrote a paper, so I've got good data on that. But then I will come and talk about what's going to be the effect of the credit crisis and the downturn on pay, and I guess more broadly on governance. So, are CEOs overpaid, or why are they paid so much? This is kind of the big governance topic that everybody seems to care about. And Josh Rao and I wrote a paper. It's coming out, I think, in the next issue of Review of Financial Studies, where we look at data. The data go through 2005, 2004 here, but I'll talk about what's happened since. So first thing, just to focus on, is there are two ways to measure pay. These are often confused, and they're confused when the press wants one number, they'll use one of these measures. When they want a different number, they'll use another one. Just remember, estimated or ex-ante pay is what the boards think they're giving the CEOs. And this is salary, bonus, restricted stock, and the Black-Scholes value of the options they give that year. Call that estimated pay because it's not anything the CEO walks away with. And then actual or realized pay, which has the first three components are the same, but then the last component is what they actually exercise or realize by exercising options. And that is a better measure of what they walk away with. It's not perfect because they don't really walk away with restricted stock. That usually vests over several years, but it's at least a better measure of what they walk away with, what they're really paid for. So what's it look like? This is just simply using executive comp, average and median pay. This is estimated pay. This is what the boards give their CEOs. And the higher bars, the blue bars are the average pay. And pay since 1998 has been flat. And in fact, average CEO pay peaked in 2000. So everywhere you read, CEO pay keeps going up, keeps going up. That is absolutely wrong. It peaked in 2000. It's actually been, in real terms, pretty much flat through 2007. Median pay peaked in 2001, has been flat since. So through 2007, which is sort of the peak of the, before we hit the downturn, it's actually been flat for 7 to 10 years, depending on how you look at it. Actual pay, it's a little different. And again, this is average and median. Average also peaked in 2000, then went down, then came back up. And median actually has gone up. Why has it gone up? Moved to restricted stock. And so the restricted stock, as I said, comes across as both realized and estimated, but it's a little misleading because it's not exactly realized. You get the restricted stock, you really can't sell it usually for 2, 3, 4 years. So again, all this criticism about CEO pay going up, it hasn't. It's been flat for 10 years. And CEOs are not the only one who make a lot of money. What Josh and I did in our paper is said, okay, where do the CEOs fall in the income distribution and on estimated pay? So again, this is what the boards are giving out. So if you're thinking about the governance issue, this is where the boards are criticized for giving too much to the CEOs. But actually, where the CEOs are in the income distribution has been about the same. So the CEO pay went up from 94 to 04, and it really, most of the increase was 94 to 99. Where these CEOs are in the income distribution, about the same place. Realized pay, they've gone up. So realized pay, at least 94 to 2004, they went up. And particularly, only at the very top, in the top 0.01%, they're kind of the same. The 0.001%, which is, I think, 14,000 tax returns, they're more highly represented. There's another way to look at this. Income inequality. I'm going to come back to this about what's going to happen with income inequality over time, because this is also something that's been on top of mind. Obama, it was a big thing, I think, of his in the Democrats campaigning. Income inequality has increased. The fat cats and the CEOs have been part of that. This is the Piketty and Says graph, which many of you have seen. Their last available data are 2006, so I'm going to compare mine to 2006. That's why it doesn't go any further. And you just see the graphs there, the top 0.1%, top 0.5%, and the top 1% share. And you just see the income share has gone up, and this is what everybody talks about with income inequality. And this is just a look over the last 16 years. Now, what I did was I said, okay, let's see what fraction of these top brackets the CEOs get. And again, the story is these CEOs are rapacious. They're getting more and more and more. And this is ex ante, so this is what the boards are giving them. And it's actually gone down. It was higher in 96, 97, 98 than it is in 06. And one suspects in 07 it's going to go down again because we saw CEO pay actually was flat, and we know that income inequality probably is going to go up in 07. So that's on ex ante. What about the realized? Realized, again, it was higher here, but it's been flat. So again, this picture about the CEOs being so different, it just isn't there. They were the same 10 years ago in the Clinton administration as they are today. You put them together and just it's the same picture. The highest sort of here, and it's actually gotten a little lower. And then that was the top 0.1%. It's the top 1%. It's the same picture. So, bottom line, CEOs are not the only ones who earn a lot. This is a picture that was a surprise the first time I did it. A year or two ago now, everybody sort of recognizes that there are three lists. This is 2005. One is ex ante pay, one is ex post pay, and one is another group. And these are the top 10 in each of the three groups in 2005. And which is, I guess most of you know this, which one is the ex ante pay? The top 10 ex ante pay, estimated pay. How many of you think it's A? These are in millions of dollars. So how many think it's A? How many think it's B? And how many think it's C? Okay. Ex ante pay is B. Because remember, ex ante is you don't have the realizations which come from the stock prices moving. This is realized because some stocks go up, some go down, so you get more variance. And who are these folks? The hedge fund folks, exactly. So you look at the hedge funds, you add them up, the top 20 hedge fund investors made more than all 500 S&P 500 CEOs combined. So, and that's 2005, and that's both ex ante and realized. If you go to 2007, the top 20 earned over 20 billion. And we know the S&P 500 was about flat, so that's in the $6 or $7 billion category. We're 8 billion. I guess it's less than 8 billion. So it's going to get even worse when we look at the 07 numbers. So CEOs are not the only ones who are earning more. Josh and I tried to figure out who's earning what. We did the investment bankers. Obviously, that's going to change. We'll talk about that later. And the investment bankers, here's where they are in the income distribution. It turns out that investment bankers, there are more investment bankers in the top 0.01% than CEOs, and top executives, top 0.001%, which is, I forget, like $30 million. Then, the CEOs, there are more, but investment bankers, a lot of wealthy investment bankers. And that was 2004. That went up in 2007, and obviously will come back down. Hedge fund fees, we know they've gone up a huge amount over time. We already saw they made a lot of money, so we made some estimates about what hedge fund people got. Venture capital and private equity, particularly private equity, on the order of $20 billion of fees to private equity in 2005. And we made some estimates about how many people were there. So these are, and the numbers of people are kind of the same order of magnitude as public company executives. Now even lawyers, nobody mentions lawyers. Lawyers have really done very well. This is the average profits per partner at the top 50 law firms. and the number of partners at the top 50 law firms. So you had 11,000 partners at top law firms in 2004 making an average of $1.2 million a year. So not CEOs are making an average of 10, median of 8. So it's higher, but the lawyers are doing okay. And this is where the lawyers in the top 0.1% of the income distribution. So again, they probably don't make the top 0.01%, but they have, they're like twice as many lawyers almost in the top brackets. So lawyers have done very well. Athletes and celebrities have done the same thing. You put it all together, and you get Main Street, which is what we got from the top executives of public companies, somewhere between 30 and 40 billion. And then you add all the Wall Street, you got 80 billion going to the highly paid, and then if you add the lawyers, you got another 20 billion. So the only point is that there are a lot of people who made a lot of money. We trained some of them, but it's not just the CEOs. Some people say, oh, you underestimate it. Executive comp understates CEO pay. There are a couple of things, SERPs and separation payments. They're not big. Some other data. Forbes 400. Who's in it? It's not the public company CEOs. It's hedge fund, private equity, real estate investors, about at least 90. Entrepreneurs and non-founder CEOs, 9. Non-founder CEOs who went to work for the company after it went public, only 4 were in the Forbes 400 because Eric Schmidt, Meg Whitman, Steve Ballmer would have been, maybe not Meg Whitman, but Steve Ballmer and Eric Schmidt would have been in that group. What does this mean? A lot of people are getting paid a lot, and those other groups, the compensation was all arm's length. So the people who argue that the CEOs, all this pay is because of managerial power and because they're stealing, why are these other groups who are kind of cut from the same cloth making at least as much, and it's all arm's length? So those pay increases have been systemic at the top end, and it suggests that the managerial argument just doesn't work, because what is true of all of these groups is there's been technological change, generally in the form of IT, and greater scale. And if you combine greater scale and technological change, you can make sense that the people at the top actually get paid more, and the CEOs are just one such group. And we go through various explanations, and the managerial power explanation, I just don't see how that works with all these other groups going up, and actually going up more since 2000. Globalization, you should see rising inequality in industries most engaged in trade. That may have some impact. It's hard to say. I'm not sure globalization explains why you have so many investors and entrepreneurs, although that's harder to say. There's some people who say, well, norms changed. It was okay to pay the CEOs more and okay to pay people more. This one I don't understand in the U.S. Maybe it's true in other countries, but in the U.S. the compensation arrangements of private equity funds, hedge funds, Wall Street have more or less been the same since 1980. And so the actual arrangements haven't changed. What has changed is scale. So the theories most consistent are some combination of scale, skill bias, technological change, and you can tell a story why technology allows people on Wall Street to manage a lot more money. You can have the CLOs and CEOs. You couldn't have that before. All these things technology allows. 3 other ways to see the scale argument. This one, again, I pick on lawyers. Why does a median CEO get $8 million? Is that a lot? Well, if the general counsel is working at a law firm and he or she's a partner, they're making over $1 million a year. If you're going to hire them to go to work for a company as a general counsel, presumably you're going to have to pay them that much. And so, is it a surprise that the CEO, and the CEO has on median 20,000 plus employees, is going to make $8 million, the general counsel has to get over $1 million. Doesn't seem so out of whack. Consultants, expert witnesses, which some of you are familiar with. It's common to see charges of $800,000 an hour. We multiply that by 2,000 hours. That's $2 million a year. And again, the CEO, the median CEO of an S&P 500 firm gets $8 million. I think that's a lot harder job than being an expert witness. CEOs were they were leaving public companies to go to private equity firms. Again, if it had been so overpaid as a public company CEO, you wouldn't see much of this. Where's my slide about the lawyers? It's coming later, but the other thing that was actually very striking was even in the Obama administration, did you notice when people filed their disclosure forms, there were 2 lawyers who were hired. There was Danilin, who I think is working in security, and Eric Holder, the Attorney General. Both of those guys made between $3 and $4 million as partners at law firms last year. So again, and they were not CEOs running these big public companies, they were lawyers. So just another argument. So now back to the CEOs and boards. Are they paid for performance? Are they penalized for poor performance? Is there a market? Barney Frank, academic studies show very little correlation between higher compensation and better performance. Here's where they're very shrewd. When they want to talk about the big paydays, do they use the ex-ante pay or the realized pay? They use realized, because those are the bigger numbers. When they want to talk about pay for performance, which numbers do they use? The ex-ante. Because the ex-ante has all the stock in it, but it hasn't gone up or down yet. What I think is a more appropriate measure of whether you're paid for performance is, what do you walk away with? And so what Josh and I did was we said, let's look at realized pay, what they walk away with, and realize this understates because of the restricted stock, which they don't really walk away with. What happens? And here, we went within size quintiles because pay varies with size, and we looked at the top compensation and these are, I guess, quintiles of compensation within size group. And what you see is the stock performance over the previous 3 years, could be 5 years, could be 1 year. Stock performance goes monotonically with realized pay, meaning the people who get paid the most have the highest stock performance. And that's got to be the case since so much of pay is in restricted stock and particularly options. So this is where a lot of games are played, and you have to be careful when you read this, because a lot of the people writing about these topics don't like the high CEO pay. Okay, our board's doing anything? I don't know, how are we doing on time? How much more time do you want me to talk? 10 minutes? Okay, good. So CEO turnover has actually gone up over time. This is, I guess we did it through, this was with Bernadette Minton, we did it through 2005, I think 06, 07, certainly 08. You will see high CEO turnover, but CEO turnover actually bumped up at about the same time that pay increased. And this is just another way to look at it over sub-periods. So that CEO tenures have actually gone down from roughly 10 years in the 70s to 6 years today. So the CEO job is riskier or maybe tougher than it used to be. Turnover is more related to stock performance than it used to be. And that also suggests, again, boards are doing something and they're doing it more than they used to. So what's the summary to this point? CEO pay has gone down or been flat since 2000. The pay of other talented people has gone up by at least as much. CEO pay is related to performance, turnover up substantially. CEOs face more performance pressure from boards, not to mention Sarbanes-Oxley and activist hedge funds running around, which weren't here 10 years ago. Why the criticism? There have been scandals. There was backdating, which was bad, but it was on the margin. Again, you have to distinguish between what's the average effect and a marginal effect, and backdating was there, but it doesn't really affect the average numbers, and it's largely been eliminated. But the numbers are big, and that attracts attention. So if you look at, this is the realized pay to the median household income. You get these 300 numbers or 200 if you use the median, and that's obviously a political target. This is something I will skip. So now what next? Is there any good news here? I don't know if it's good news. I'll tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen now that we're in the credit crunch? Well, you can expect CEO pay to decline in 2008, because those are the numbers that have just been published, and 2009. Bonuses are going to be smaller. Option realizations are going to be lower, and restricted stock is going to be worth less. That's on realized pay. Ex-ante pay is also going to be down, but it's going to be down by less this year because a lot of the pay in 2008 was actually decided on in the spring in the case of many companies. And so you'll see some decline, and you saw that. I couldn't believe the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times wrote that CEO pay had gone down in 2008, and which they never ever say before. They never ever say. They had to this time, finally, because realized pay went down, which they didn't mention. They only mentioned ex-ante pay, and even that went down. And you can see, here's just a graph of the S&P 500 that's green with average realized pay. And it's pretty interesting how the average realized pay moves with the S&P. This is ex-ante, and it doesn't move quite as cleanly, but it moves. And you can actually run a regression with the percentage change in CEO pay. So this is the average for the S&P 500 against the change in the S&P 500 and the lag change. And for realized pay, you actually see it dropping contemporaneously and lag. So the S&P was down 40%. So realized pay ought to have been down 37% in 08, and it'll drop another 20% in 09, assuming the stock market is more or less flat this year. Ex-ante pay, you see that the big effect is lagged a year. So you get a decline in, if the stock market goes down, you should get a decline in the contemporaneous year, but you get a bigger decline in the year after. So that's why you should expect 2009 pay to go down. For those of you who don't like CEO pay, I guess that's good news, but it's not really a change. Income inequality is also going to go down, and this will affect tax revenues, but you can do the same thing. You see that the pattern is not as well matched, but it clearly, income inequality moves with the stock market, and you can run a regression, and again you get the percentage change in the top 1% share. Actually, in the same year, it's like 0.23% the change in the S&P 500, and then it's about the same lagged a year. And so that suggests that the share of the top 1% is going to go down, and the top 0.1% is again going to go down. Now, unfortunately, we won't know these numbers for another 2 or 3 years, and the 2007 numbers are going to be worse than 2006. So you've got a lot of negative press about this, but the fact is income inequality almost certainly has gone down. What does this mean for regulation? CEOs are no different from others who are highly paid, and I basically think leave things alone. Now, that's unlikely to happen, but that is how I interpret these data. The pay caps for banks taking bailout money is crazy, so I don't need to say that. So let me conclude. While corporate governance is not perfect in the U.S., it's very unlikely, looking at these data, that high CEO pay is driven by managerial power and agency. Certainly on the margin, there was bad behavior that exists, but the main drivers, is very hard to see managerial power, given that pay of these other groups has increased substantially despite the arm's length nature of their arrangements. Pay has dropped since 2000, share of top incomes has dropped since 88, and that's going to continue given what's happened with the stock market. Pay is tied to performance, tenures decline significantly, turnover more closely tied to performance, and there you go. And thank you very much.